I never planned for this to happen. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to unravel their entire existence, to question every thread of identity they've been weaving since childhood. But life has a way of forcing your hand, of pushing you toward truths you've been running from your entire life. My name is Alex. At least, that's the name my parents gave me. That's the name on my driver's license, my college diploma, my credit cards. That's the name my friends call me when we meet for drinks, the name my colleagues use in endless email chains. But names are strange things. They're supposed to define us, to anchor us to who we are. Yet mine always felt like a costume I was wearing, never quite fitting right, always a little too tight around the edges. I grew up in a typical suburban household. My father was an accountant, my mother a teacher. I have one younger sister, Emily, who always seemed to glide through life with an ease I could never understand. Everything about my childhood looked normal from the outside: little league games, family vacations to the beach, birthday parties at pizza places with arcade games. But inside, there was always this dissonance, this feeling that I was reading from the wrong script in the play of my own life. I was 7 years old the first time I felt it, that pull towards something I couldn't name. It was Halloween, and Emily was dressing up as a princess. I remember watching my mother help her into that shimmering pink dress, adjusting her plastic tiara, applying just a touch of lip gloss. The way Emily twirled in front of the mirror, the way the fabric moved around her, something inside me ached with a longing I didn't understand. I was supposed to be a superhero that year. My Superman costume lay on my bed, bright red and blue, a cape that promised power and strength. But I didn't want to be Superman. I wanted to know what that dress felt like, how it would feel to twirl and watch fabric float around me like magic. Of course, I never said anything. How could I? I was a boy. Boys didn't wear dresses. Boys didn't want to be princesses. These were facts as fundamental as gravity, as undeniable as the sky being blue. So I buried that feeling, pushed it down into some dark corner of myself where unwanted thoughts go to hide. But buried things have a way of growing in the dark. The years of silence. Middle school and high school were exercises in performance art. I learned to play the role expected of me. I joined the basketball team, not because I loved the sport, but because that's what boys did. I dated girls, forcing myself to feel attractions that never quite landed where they should. I laughed at the right jokes, adopted the right posture, learned the language of masculinity like a foreign tongue I was desperate to master. But late at night, alone in my room with the door locked, I would find myself drawn to my mother's closet when she wasn't home. The first time I tried on one of her dresses, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely manage the zipper. I was 14, and I was terrified. Terrified someone would catch me, terrified of what it meant that I wanted this so desperately, terrified of the reflection I saw in the mirror. Because when I looked at myself in that dress, something clicked into place. For just a moment, the dissonance quieted. The person staring back at me wasn't perfect. I didn't magically transform into someone else, but there was a rightness to it, an alignment that I'd never felt in any basketball jersey or button-down shirt. I would only allow myself these moments once every few months, always consumed by shame immediately afterward. I would take off the clothes, return them exactly as I found them, and swear to myself it would be the last time. It never was. College was supposed to be different. I went to a large state university 3 hours from home, convinced that distance and independence would cure whatever was wrong with me. I threw myself into my studies, majored in marketing, joined a fraternity, dated a girl named Jessica for 2 years. I was checking all the boxes, following the roadmap to a successful, normal life. But the feeling never went away. If anything, it grew stronger, more insistent. I would lie awake at night, my girlfriend sleeping beside me, and feel like I was drowning in my own skin. The disconnect between who I was supposed to be and who I felt I was becoming unbearable. I started finding excuses to be alone. I rented an off-campus apartment my senior year. I discovered online communities, forums and chat rooms where people talked about cross-dressing, gender identity, transformation. I learned that I wasn't alone, that there were thousands of people navigating similar feelings. The terminology was overwhelming at first. Cross-dresser, transgender, gender fluid, non-binary. I didn't know which label fit, or if any of them did. What I did know was that when I was alone in my apartment, dressed in the women's clothes I'd secretly purchased from thrift stores, I felt more myself than I ever did in my daily life. I started buying makeup, teaching myself application techniques from YouTube videos. I invested in a wig, better quality clothes. I created an alternate identity online, Alexandra, who I allowed to exist only in digital spaces and behind locked doors. The breaking point. After graduation, I moved to the city and started working at a marketing firm. I was good at my job, maybe because so much of marketing is about understanding people, and I'd spent my entire life studying how to perform identity convincingly. I dated occasionally, always keeping people at arm's length. How could I let anyone truly close when I was living a double life, when half of who I was existed only in secret? The breaking point came on a random Tuesday evening when I was 26 years old. I'd had a particularly long day at work, the kind where every meeting feels pointless and every email seems designed to drain your soul. I came home to my empty apartment, poured myself a glass of wine, and without really thinking about it, started getting dressed, really dressed, as Alexandra. I'd gotten good at it by then. My makeup application was nearly flawless. I'd learned to style wigs, to choose clothes that actually flattered my body type, to walk in heels without looking like a newborn deer. I put on my favorite dress, a navy blue fit and flare with small white flowers, and sat on my couch, sipping wine and scrolling through my phone. And then I asked myself a question that changed everything. What if I never had to take this off? It wasn't the first time the thought had occurred to me, but it was the first time I didn't immediately push it away in terror. What if I didn't spend the rest of my life compartmentalized, switching between two versions of myself? What if Alexandra wasn't a secret identity but simply me? The wine glass trembled in my hand, because acknowledging that possibility meant acknowledging everything it would cost me. My family's acceptance, my career, my friends, the comfortable life I'd built. Everything. But wasn't I already paying a cost? Wasn't I losing myself, day by day, pretending to be someone I wasn't? I didn't transition overnight. That's not how these stories work in real life. I started small, bought some androgynous clothes that I could wear out in public without drawing too much attention. I let my hair grow longer. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in gender identity, and those sessions were simultaneously the hardest and most liberating hours of my week. Dr. Patterson never pushed me in any direction. She just asked questions, created space for me to explore thoughts I'd been suppressing for decades. Identity isn't something you choose, she told me once. It's something you discover. And sometimes that discovery takes courage because it means accepting that the life you've been living wasn't really yours. I came out to my sister first. Emily had always been perceptive, and I think some part of her already knew. We met for coffee on a Saturday morning, and I spent 30 minutes talking around the subject before finally blurting it out. I think I might be transgender. Or maybe gender fluid. I don't know exactly, but I've been cross-dressing for most of my life, and I think I need to figure out who I really am. The silence that followed felt like it lasted an eternity. Then Emily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm glad you told me," she said. "I could tell something was going on with you. You always seemed so distant. Like you were watching your own life from outside yourself." She wasn't wrong. Coming out to my parents was harder. My father didn't speak to me for 3 months. My mother cried, asked where she'd gone wrong, wondered if this was her fault. Those conversations were brutal, full of pain and misunderstanding. But slowly, incrementally, they began to come around. It helped that Emily was my advocate, that she refused to let them turn me into some family secret to be ashamed of. Becoming. I started hormone replacement therapy 6 months after first coming out. Watching my body change was like watching a plant grow. Some days you can't see any difference, and then suddenly you realize everything is different. My skin softened. My body redistributed weight. Small changes, but they felt monumental. I also started presenting as female more often, first in LGBTQ-friendly spaces, then gradually in more mainstream settings. Every time I left my apartment dressed as myself, my heart pounded. I was acutely aware of every stare, every whisper. Cross-dressing and transitioning come with a visibility that can be terrifying. You become a walking conversation starter, whether you want to be or not. There were bad days. Days when someone misgendered me deliberately, their eyes full of contempt. Days when I looked in the mirror and saw only the features that seemed too masculine, the ways I didn't measure up to some imaginary standard of femininity. Days when I wondered if I was making a terrible mistake, if I should just go back to pretending, because pretending was familiar and safe. But there were also good days. The first time a stranger casually referred to me as M without any hesitation. The first time I introduced myself as Alexandra and it felt completely natural. The day I legally changed my name, sitting in that courthouse with Emily beside me, officially becoming the person I'd always been inside. I won't pretend this journey hasn't cost me. I lost some friends who couldn't accept my transition. My career stalled for a while, some colleagues struggled with the change, and I know I was passed over for at least one promotion because of bias. My dating life became exponentially more complicated. Explaining your gender identity to potential partners is a unique kind of vulnerability. My relationship with my father remains strained. He tries, I think, but there's a distance between us now that I'm not sure will ever fully close. He still sometimes slips and uses my old name, and I can see the grief in his eyes, grief for the son he thought he had, grief for the simpler life he imagined for me. But here's what I've gained. Myself. The real me, not the performance I'd been giving for 26 years. I wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and see someone authentic. I move through the world in clothes that feel right, with a name that fits, in a body that's increasingly aligned with my internal sense of self. I've found community, other trans and gender non-conforming people who understand this journey in ways that cisgender people, no matter how supportive, never fully can. I've discovered a depth of courage I didn't know I possessed. Every day I live authentically is an act of radical bravery in a world that often doesn't want me to exist as I am. Reflections from the other side. People often ask me if I regret waiting so long to transition, if I'm angry about the years I lost living as someone else. The truth is complicated. Yes, sometimes I mourn the experiences I missed, the adolescence I never had as myself, the young adult years spent hiding. But I also know that people come to these realizations on their own timelines. We can't force self-discovery. It unfolds when we're ready to face it. What I want people to understand about cross-dressing and gender nonconformity is that it's not a choice in the way people think. I didn't choose to feel disconnected from my assigned gender. I didn't choose to find peace and authenticity in presenting differently. What I did choose was to stop running from that truth, to honor it instead of burying it. The hook of my story, that moment with the dress, wasn't really about the dress at all. It was about allowing myself to imagine a different life, about having the courage to step into uncertainty for the sake of authenticity. That dress was just fabric and thread, but it represented permission. Permission to question, to explore, to become. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself in my journey, if you felt that same dissonance, that same pull towards something society tells you is wrong, I want you to know that you're not broken. You're not sick. You're not confused. You're a human being trying to understand yourself, and that's the most natural thing in the world. Your journey might look different from mine. You might identify as transgender and fully transition. You might identify as a crossdresser who's comfortable with your assigned gender but enjoys expressing differently. You might be non-binary, gender fluid, or something else entirely. All of these are valid. All of these are real. The path won't be easy. There will be people who don't understand, who reject you, who make your existence political when all you're trying to do is live authentically. There will be days when you question everything, when the cost seems too high, when hiding seems infinitely easier than being seen. But there will also be moments of profound joy. The first time you look in the mirror and really see yourself. The first time someone sees you and accepts you without question. The moment you realize you're not just surviving anymore, you're actually living. Today, I'm 30 years old. I've been living full-time as Alexandra for 3 years. I work at a different marketing firm now, one with better diversity policies and more accepting colleagues. I'm dating someone who sees me, really sees me, and loves me not despite who I am but because of it. My mother now asks about my life, uses my correct name and pronouns, even if it doesn't always come naturally to her yet. The life I never chose, that assigned identity, that masculine performance, that constant feeling of wrongness, is behind me. The life I claimed for myself, the one I had to fight for, is mine now. It's not perfect. I still face discrimination. I still have days when dysphoria hits hard. I still live in a world that often wants to police gender expression, that sees deviation from norms as threatening. But it's my life. Authentically, messily, beautifully mine. That hook, the moment with the dress, was really about permission. Permission to question the script I'd been handed. Permission to imagine something different. Permission to become. And if there's one thing I want you to take from this story, it's this: you have permission to. Permission to question. Permission to explore. Permission to become whoever you truly are, even if, especially if, it's someone the world didn't expect you to be. The dress was never the point. The point was always courage. The courage to look at your reflection and say, this doesn't feel right. The courage to imagine something different. The courage to step into your own life, even when it means leaving behind the one everyone else planned for you. This is my story. The life I never chose became mine when I finally had the courage to choose myself. They ask me if it was worth it, losing comfort for authenticity, trading security for truth. And I tell them this: I didn't lose anything I hadn't already lost by pretending. The life I was living wasn't mine. I was just a guest in someone else's story. Now I'm finally home. In this body, in these clothes, in this truth. And that's worth everything.